get into it, as they say on All Things Podcast.
I'm sure you've had the extremely unpleasant experience when you have got a big bite of food going in your mouth and then a sneeze arises out of it. And you know, that even if you try any kind of like, breathing through your teeth or force it all through your nose, any way you're going to slice this, some part of the food that you're chewing is going to end up in your sinus. And it's a very strong likelihood that it's going to ruin your entire day. Have you at least had some version of this experience?
No, but I do worry that I'm going to blow my asshole out if I try to contain a sneeze. And so, no, I'm pretty good at holding in a mouthful of food while not jamming it up my sinus. You might have some sort of a disorder.
So it's very possible that I have some kind of food sinus sneeze related disorder, and I found the cure, which is great because the disorder shall no longer afflict me. I'm sure you were so worried about that for so long.
Yeah, as rare as it is, I know that it is terminal, so you got to do what you got to do.
Thank you. And now that I found my way out of it, I wish to share my findings with the tens of people who are conceivably watching this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no more food and just nose beers instead. That'll really hollow out the sinuses, and food never really gets in the way.
So if you happen to have, because for whatever reason in Mexico City right now, it's gotten sunny after a lot of rain, and there's like an allergy sort of a time. And the same thing happened when I moved to New York. I don't normally have allergies, but if it's a new environment, that sometimes I will be afflicted.
Yeah.
So I had a huge sneeze going and was chewing up like a massive bagel bite, just like a full, like the cheeks out sort of a thing. And I was very sure that it was going to be one of those like all the way through the whole sinus sneezes, and that some part of that food was going to end up there. So I figured out that if you take your hands and kind of like a mother bird, briefly upchuck the food into your hands and then have your sneeze, you can just put the food right back in your mouth and finish sneezing. And there's no, food in the sinus. It was actually I felt one of the highlight of my achievements during the week.
Well, I'm glad that you had a very worthwhile week where throwing up in your hands was the highlight, because for me, that would be a low light, and there's a lot of low points of the week, but that would have been the lowest for me. So, we have different primate hierarchies, No, I generally just will sneeze. I'll pull a classic Dracula. What is it? Some sort of a cover it up here. But no, I haven't had that issue, but it's nice to know that you vomited your way through it. And so, hey.
It was more like a voluntary and very temporary regurgitation. And what it allowed me was to separate the sneeze from the chewing. Because if you mix the sneeze and the chewing, generally it's not a great experience. It tends to be terrible.
Are you familiar with a bite of food, what it's called once it's going down the system?
No. Is there like a term for that?
Yeah, it's called a bolus, bolus. And so you'll have to create a shirt for your new experience called Control the Bolus.
Yeah, I regulated the bolus. It was wonderful.
Yeah, people will ask you about it, and you'll just be very excited. Be like, well, I used to have this issue, actually a disorder, where I would take food into my sinus, cause a lot of infections, and so now I throw up into my own hands in order to save the day, and then it all goes down well. And you look at them excitedly, and they go, oh, anyway. Control the bolus. Wow. I'm proud of you for your modern day problem solving. That was very 2024 of you.
I don't know how proud I am, but I felt like it was like kind of like the guy who invented the Heimlich maneuver. He just felt like he needed to be shared. It was just a thing that other people needed to hear about. And I agree with you. It's totally disgusting and it may be aspect of my own affliction, but nevertheless, I think it needed to be out there in the world.
Well, you found a thing and you lost some social credit in the meantime. As far as when people see you do this, you will have your own personal win of not having food in places it shouldn't be. And then you'll lose some people, but everything's a trade-off.
I don't mind losing a few of the stragglers, you know what I mean? People that already had a questionable opinion of me. Frankly, they should have manned up and dismissed or canceled me a long time before. So if this is what pushes them over the edge, then that's a twofer. That's a double win in my book.
I guess before the Heimlich, we were doing some sort of a sweep. You get down into the gullet and you push it down, or you see if you can grab a pinch of it and pull it out, or shake it upside down to get some mung from a pregnant pygmy.
That's a great question. What were these pre-Heimlich maneuvers?
A slapping in the face, water in the face. I don't know, sending somebody to a mental institution because they have the vapors.
The vapors, yeah. There's a lot of that. I think it's like we used to deal with humans like we deal now with horses, where if they get a runny nose, they're immediately institutionalized or executed.
Yeah, you get some sort of a large cage type device that limits your conversation and food eating abilities, where you're forced to only take in pea-size amounts by jamming it through a tube, whatever it takes.
Yeah, tube feeding was a cure for just about anything, especially women. I think were particularly effective.
Yeah, yes, for a perfect remedy for a sassy wife, you know? Yeah, man. Ah, the golden era.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily the golden era. I think that like we were talking about this before with my lovely friend here in Mexico City, and talking about how we both have had family members. For us, it was our great grandfather, Papa Nick, and for her, it was her grandparents' generation. That they would just kind of be drunk all the time and throughout the day. And although nowadays we can look back on that and be like, well, that's kind of déclassé or frowned upon, not unlike putting a bolus into your bare, unclean hands. But like, the point of it was, I think as we were talking, I was like, well, it occurs to me that for the longest time, there was no good, clean water. And so if there's no good, clean water, even children in like pre-pasteurization of things, that you would just have a little bit of a buzz going kind of all day long. And that was safer than drinking water.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a thing until coffee came around. Coffee changed a lot of the consumption habits of liquids. But yeah, it was just a steady stream of alcohol all the time. And life was hard enough as it is. You're like, I could use like just a nice permanent fade, bro. Just again, let's take the edge off. I don't want to have to go through life without any chemical buffers.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a modern contrivance that we think that being sober is great. And I actually kind of do believe that being sober is great. I've never been one to think that anything truly good comes out of being like usually just stoned or drunk, because that's kind of the weapons of choice, so to speak, for your modern addict. We both kind of had those struggles, let's say, with those experiences. But nevertheless, if it was between I'm going to be drunk pretty much all day long, or I'm going to have some kind of waterborne illness that would kill me by the time I'm 35 or 40, I would probably be just a little drunk.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't want to get hoof and mouth or any of those old-timey diseases, maybe like a pinworms or a scabies. Yeah, you don't want any of that, so might as well catch a buzz while you're staying safe.
What's consumption?
Isn't it just like some sort of the polar end of alcoholic desperation?
No, they always see the English invented a lot of this stuff because it came out of the Enlightenment, and it was the English kind of colloquialisms, which, I mean, just even in modern times, like the idea of like common drugs like Adderall or sertraline or stuff like that. There's a person that makes that up, right? It's not just like this is the proper name for anything. The name is what we bestow upon it.
Yeah.
So in the 19th century, 1800s, when modern medicine was kind of popularized, there's some English physician that, first diagnosed and began to treat, probably with some kind of, I don't know, awful sort of treatment regimen, the consumption. And I don't know, what is consumption?
Oh, come on, man. Like, I'm on the very phone that I would look things up with. Wish I had a Jamie for this.
I got it. No, I got it. It's okay. It's a wasting disease, which sounds decidedly Victorian, especially pulmonary tuberculosis, which I think is of the lungs.
That's what you found that right now?
I would love to think that I could make up something that sounds that legitimate, but no, I in fact read that from the internet.
Oh my God. Well, anything that says wasting disease in it, I am in full support. There's some of that going around right now in the deer population called CWD, chronic wasting disease. And you get these deer that have had some sort of a bacteria and their brains are being eaten away by some terrible bacteria, and they're just skinny and broken, and you'll find them out doing deer shit that isn't typically done. They got consumption.
That's terrible. So what happens? Is it the thing that would spread to humans, or they would just be sad and scrappy?
I want to say that it might be a prion disease, so something that like mad cow or that you get from eating other humans. I don't know that to be true, but it might be. But that, no, it is prevalent in the meat. It can carry over to humans as far as I understand it, and is absolutely spreading across the deer population in a heinous way. But to be fair, deers are just glorified rats to begin with.
I kind of believe that. I think that most mammals are kind of just glorified rats, and because they're furry and sometimes like have certain behaviors that occur in ways that seem oddly familiar, that some of them we even take into our home and train them as pets. It's really something. But the reality is that all mammals are kind of that ilk, right?
Well, yeah, but also an occasional deer that comes by and it seems mysterious. If it rarely happens, then it feels like it chose you and it feels special. But for people in places that deers are just everywhere, yeah, they infest and they destroy and they ruin everything and they're indiscriminate shitters and they just shit on everything and they eat your favorite stuff and they gather in herds like just a rat king of long-legged ungulates.
So that's really the question. When did mammals start to develop hooves? Because I feel like hooves and antlers are aspect of like nails and teeth, right? Isn't that all the same thing? Like horns and teeth? No?
No. Horns and hair and teeth are not the same. You're talking about keratin. That's what hair is made out of, and that's what fingernails are made out of, and that's what horns and antlers are made of, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, that makes sense, because I've seen there's like a famous video of a deer shaking off his antlers, which was like, if you saw Batman taking off his Batman attire, you're just like, what the actual fuck? I thought you were always Batman, and evidently that's not true.
Yeah, antlers are the fastest growing, oh shit, I don't even, body part, fastest growing whatever the fuck of any mammal, that because like every single year they fall off, and then those gigantic racks that you see on elk and shit, they grew that in less than a year.
Wow. Well, here at Sure Thing, we support the gigantic racks of the world. So yeah. sorry,
Hey.
sorry to go full quagmire there, but
Yes,
yeah.
yes. We support giant racks. Somebody brought me my favorite rocks to the gym that I work at.
What kind of rocks are those?
That's a Mukaite jasper from Australia. Sounds like a derogatory race-related term, but nonetheless, somebody was asking me about what rocks I like, and I said that one, and that I didn't have any left, and he brought me some to work. It was very thoughtful.
Well, that's wonderful. And then that's the one that I think I referred to in the past as having Laker colors, right?
Yeah, that was what you. Yeah, exactly that.
Of all of these things that you've done, and I've known that you've had this, petrophilia, is that what we're calling it these days? What do you call a rock? What's the Latin for rock?
I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, I got an Elia about it.
All right, good. So of these things, is it merely like a decorative thing, or is it like gold where there's some inherent value, like a currency sort of a thing? Could you sell these items?
Yes, but only to a small niche of people, and rock hounders are generally poor. Like, it is not one of the dalliances of the rich. I had probably spent $10,000 to $15,000 on rocks and equipment, both found, purchased, etc. And in the last 2 years since I got rid of it all, it's all way more expensive. And that, yeah, in the groups of people, like the Facebook groups and whatnot, I could have, but I just like the process of going out and finding it, running it through 3 or 4 months of tumbling, and then the end result being just a beautiful, I mean, I could easily see it being like somewhere between gambling, treasure hunting, and wanting to take a thing that is dirty and found and turning it into something polished and beautiful as some sort of abstraction of what I probably ought to be doing within, but I just do it with a rock and it's safer and easier.
So your unsorted emotional baggage has taken rock form.
Yeah. I manifested it in some sort of rockophilia. Yeah.
So that leads me to what I think we should really be doing. And although I'm all about, this AsifCon thing and pursuing the creative thing that we've talked so long about, and now that we have kind of a bucket, so to speak, to put that in, that there are a million things that we could be doing. And as I've gotten more comfortable with my friend group here in Mexico and sharing some of just the craziness that has been my life, I think that the next craziness ought to be you and I going after something absurdly ambitious, like meteorites in Antarctica or something like that.
All right. Well, if you can aim us in a particular direction, or if we could figure something out, I'm certainly open to it.
So have you ever seen like what a meteorite looks like, where it's like this like glob and has all these little chunks? So like a glob with chunks, and it's translucent, and they're like billions of years old. Then that's a genuinely valuable thing.
Yeah, I'm a rock guy. I've seen meteorites, and there's a joke on the rock Facebook pages that these people come in. There's Mostly people that know their shit, and every now and then people sign up for these groups just because they want to get this thing that they found X amount of years ago identified. And it's always, is this a diamond? Is this gold? Is this a meteorite? What's it worth? And it's never any of the first three, and it's never worth anything. But there's this weird idea that people have when they find something they don't recognize, that it's always a meteorite. And that's just like an ongoing joke in these things. But to actually find it, A, is really rare, really difficult, and yeah, really, really valuable. And there's a bunch of different kinds of them too.
What I'm thinking is that because we're both kind of like rugged and fearless, sort of, and that there are a million things to do, that the things don't necessarily have to be that which has defined our lives over the course of the last, let's say, 5 years or so. Because like you've been doing your dog walking business, which is great, and it exhibits the best aspects of your personality. And I feel the same way about my model management business, that like I don't see a lot of other people being able to do this, and it's interesting, and the public seems to like it. But that doesn't mean we have to do that forever. And so finding objects that probably are terrestrial, but in our infinite self-obsessed point of view, possibly came from space and are worth millions of dollars. In any respect, something like that would be kind of worthwhile, like worth our time.
So would you be looking for some sort of investor to pay for some sort of exploration like this, or are you going to fund that yourself? Because I can't do it.
No, so here's the thing. So like we'll probably sell off a few of the websites of like the more famous girls, like the Birches or something, and then have a little bit of money to fuck around with. And rather than just being like, oh, I will have an indulgent, like what I did when we sold Cliffside Malibu, where I just kind of traveled for 6 months and got Alex accidentally pregnant for a second time. That might not have been the best use of that money. Instead, we could say that maybe fucking around with French-speaking Canadians and traveling needlessly to various places without kind of a goal. Because like you shared the thing, your meme the other day was flaneur. You know what a flaneur is?
Yeah, I mean, I posted it, didn't I? As some sort of aimless wandering, as wandering being the main goal of the mosey.
Yeah, like a mosey or like a privileged observer, like especially for like the Anglo-Westerner traveling through like Vietnam or other places where Anglo-Westerners tend to mosey, is that you would want to go and just kind of have this like privileged point of view where you could conceivably hook up with girls or have interesting culinary delightful experiences or stuff like that. I don't know that that's really great. Actually, I think it's kind of self-indulgent. And the Anthony Bourdain, who is definitely a unique, or was, let's say, a unique human, has kind of inserted this idea into the mind of Westerners. And so like the word wanderlust and flaneur. And don't get me wrong, if you've never traveled, get your ass out there with a fucking passport in your hand and go see some places. But once you have done that, at least a little bit, maybe we have a goal. And then to my thinking, the goal is whale upchuck, the ambergris thing, or dinosaur fossils, or like, meteorites that have fallen in Antarctica, which I think you could get together like 3 or 4 months of an expedition for like 25, 30 grand.
Yeah. I mean, I hear Antarctica is pretty cold. I mean, you'll have to get yourself a fine winter coat.
Right. It's not even about that. You're doing it because it's hard. So I've had numerous friends, 4 friends that have all worked there. My one friend, Yuki, has gone down there. And what he said is that people who go down there the first time, it's because they have the sense of adventure that they want to go. And it's interesting. He was obsessed with the moon. He's a satellite engineer. And so he was always wanted to go to the moon, which is exceedingly difficult. And there was just that failed moon mission that didn't work out. But he went back a second time because he kind of couldn't get over it. And they say that people who go back for a third time to Antarctica, it's because they were like unable to re-enter society. Yeah. So I don't know that I want to go 3 times, but I would go at least 1 time to kind of see what it's really like. And then probably a second time with meaningful intent to like, I don't know, utilize some kind of like satellite data, maybe find something that fell to the earth from space and then sell it in such a way that not only made me feel like I've done something good, but put some money back in my pocket to cover the cost of the trip.
Well, which of those things stands out as most desirous for you?
So I'm of the opinion that we should just do all of them because I've never been one for moderation.
Yeah, but if it had to start somewhere, just for the sake of doing some research and exploring an ideal way to do it, which one would be your starting point?
Well, I think the Antarctic one is the most attainable because you've talked about in the past that we don't really have a professional background to be commercial paleontologists. And it's also a questionable, legal endeavor. So yeah, I don't necessarily, I'm not going to put myself in jail on purpose. Let's put it that way.
You'll still have to look at the legal aspects of obtaining space rock from Iceville.
That's true. Iceville is a funny word. But when things fall to the ground, from space, unless it falls on somebody's land, if it's a public sort of situation, that there is kind of a finders keepers. I don't know that the exact legal terminology is exactly finders keepers, but it's of that ilk, so to speak.
Yeah, but not everywhere. Not in like nature preserves, and depends on what it is. And you have to look at like BLM land versus preservation land, etc. So yes and no. That there sometimes needs to be some sense of, as we said, staked claims. That's why I asked, because you gotta figure that shit out, or else you're just throwing money away.
Right, and I would have a call with like an attorney or talk to some, because if there's anything we know about these, and this is yourself included, these rock people or these like, you know, collectors of questionable obscurities, they love to talk about their questionable obscurities.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be that hard to just chat somebody up and have them like share their experience.
Yeah, I mean, rock people are pretty cagey about sharing the places that they find their unobtainium.
Unobtainium, that's great. Okay, so maybe it's not that. It could be an attorney too, because attorneys, they love to charge by the hour to just ramble. It's like their favorite thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to aim it at a particular direction in order to do some further research, I'll check it out.
So that would be, I think, a next sort of thing. And the creative stuff, I mean, how to connect with this Asif Khan, who's to say? It's really as easy as like Instagram, because that was the first nudge. But it's also very difficult because, you know, creatives are kind of also in their own way cagey and would have the tendency to want to protect whatever it is that they're doing, or to like keep it free from like, you know, prying undulates such as ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my God. I am not hoofed, but I do like the word undulate. But yeah, I mean, I've replied to some of Asif's Instagram stuff, and if he's running his Instagram, he responds. He's reasonably accessible.
Okay, so maybe we should probably just do the creative thing first, because it's like difficult, but it's not like impossibly difficult, like traveling to a tundra continent and trying to find things that have fallen to the sky from outer space.
There's that pragmatism we've been looking for, that you're known for.
I don't know that I'm known for it, but what I think we're both known for is going after things in a way that's not necessarily totally ruinous. It's ironic because even 2.5 years ago, my company was in a much different space where we could have sent an away message, an extended away message in the old email, and done this even in like for 3 months for, you know, a reasonable amount of money. But, you know, that moment has passed. But I do feel the sense that things as they are kind of a little like choppy, let's say, in the American character. And so in those times of uncertainty, all the more reason to do something fairly, I don't know, quirky and outside the lines.
Yeah, I mean, now's the time. It's all very weird out there. Might as well roll with the weird and become it.
So if you had to pick, though, what would you do? I mean, obviously we want to do the creative, the writing thing first, the funny first, but then what?
I mean, Antarctica doesn't strike me as the place that I would go for meteorite-related things, just because it is so inhospitable. But that does stand out as the thing that I would be most interested of all that.
Okay, well, it's largely unclaimed that there are territories and zones of influences. I know the geography. There are those zones of influences where, like, the Russians have their research station, the Americans and British have their own research station. So, like, you know, you can get away with more. Whereas, I mean, I have always preferred the cold over the heat, and so I know that the inner part of Australia is also kind of free game because there ain't nothing going on there but like dingoes and cactus. But I don't necessarily love the heat. What do you think?
I don't know the inner ins and outs of the legality of going to Australia to obtain gold and opal, but that's what they have there. And there's a show called Aussie Gold Hunters if you want to get a sense of it, because there are people out there doing that all the time.
Okay, and what are they? I mean, obviously it's reality TV, so it's partially fiction, at least a little bit. But what's the gist? I mean, they're there to strike it rich, or they're there to, you know, get wandering forever?
No, they're there to strike it rich. They have great equipment. They know the places where it's usually at. Opal is generally 20 to 30 at least feet underground. So you're talking about earth movers and all sorts of shit like that, and reasonably precarious mining shafts and situations. But then the gold that they're using, like probably ground penetrating radar as well as metal detectors. And there's just certain areas where that stuff, one of them's called the Cuba Petey Mine. I'm on the nuggies. And they're finding gold and black opal in particular is what they're looking for down there.
Okay. I mean, I saw Uncut Gems and it was great. And I'm interested in that generally. I don't know that minerals and mineral rights are of great interest other than lithium, because like that's just a thing that everybody needs now. What with the electrification of it all, we all need rechargeable batteries.
Yep. Well, you could go on a hunt for the good old lithium if you want. I don't know how that works at all.
Okay, so I have looked into that because even though he's kind of become this like public pariah, I still think that Elon Musk is uniquely ambitious and is certainly uniquely successful. And so what he said is that if you had a reasonable way to both locate and refine lithium, that's just like printing money. So I did look into that, and there's like finding it, and then it's kind of mixed in with other impurities, and then there's an apparatus, and then it goes through the apparatus, and the apparatus is not cheap, nor is it easy to operate. And it seemed like a thing that if I were going to do it, our cousin Kyle, because he has like oil extraction background, that would be the person to talk to.
Yeah, I think something was recently found on the California-Oregon border that was one of the biggest lithium reserves ever found on the planet.
That's exactly right. And in typical fashion, this vast natural resource happens to be on Native American protected soil. So I'm very curious to see how long it takes for us to unass these natives of their wonderfully enriched lands. I'm sure it won't take long. We're Americans after all.
Yeah, we'll find just the right way to bully them out of our money, or bully our money out of them.
That's so terrible.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that you can find things that aren't easy to find and do things that aren't easy to do, but that won't necessarily kill you, and that would still kind of be worthwhile. I think that the reason why the dinosaur thing in India kind of struck me as most opportunistic is because they just don't have the resources. Like as a country, they haven't like set up like the Ministry of whatever the fuck, petroglyphic objects of the past. And because of that, it's just not a thing that they put a lot of energy into. And so you could find somebody who is probably from India or had that background academically and get them working. And they would be grateful for the opportunity to have some money. And we would be grateful to take the most valuable of those items out to auction immediately.
And then share the dregs with your Ministry of Petrophilia. You found the word on accident.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all of this is kind of like this like hogwash until it becomes a real thing. And I had the idea for the websites that I'm doing. You remember Christina from many years ago.
So at least since the early 2000s, I had some notion that I was a reasonably okay photographer and can meet girls. And if you put those two things together, plus the website, next thing you know, you have your own way of printing money. And it took from the time that I was working with her, which was like 2004 to 2006, up until the time that we actually launched our first website, something like 12 years had gone by. And I think that that's stupid because I didn't have to work all these other, lame brain digital jobs all the way up until that, had I the guts to go out and do it. And so I think that that's kind of how the world works, that there are all these things that anybody really could do, between Asif Khan and like the black opals of Australia. But the only thing that kind of is disconnected from you as a person and the hard to obtain thing is the guts, is the wherewithal. And I think that we both have the guts and the wherewithal.
Yeah, some chutzpah.
Correct, sir.
Yeah, you got to have some of that.
All right, so let's kind of let that as our next thing to do. Now, let me ask you this: have you had time to take notes, or do you have any notes that you'd like to share
on Pasadena High or on the first episode that you shared with me?
Well, we have a lot of notes for Pasadena High already. Again, that's more with a wherewithal thing where we just have to like commit time to writing it. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like one-liners or zingers. Like have you gone into a self-checkout line at a supermarket? Have you chatted up a stranger in a Starbucks? Any number of things that might lead to comedy gold.
No. I have been very busy and in a bit of a psychological funk, mood-wise.
Why is there a psychological funk going on?
Because it's just dark and cold and rainy and just shitty all the time. Outside of being mostly broke and living in a strange situation, just through winter, I have a tendency to dip mood-wise. So no, I'm a little somewhere between unmotivated and psychologically compromised.
Psychologically compromised. Okay, well that sucks. I always find that that's a great time to kind of be writing because it puts us in a place where we are forced to kind of, match wits with the reality around us. And if the reality around us is kind of terrible and daunting, all the more reason to find something creative like, fossil hunting, if you will.
I certainly agree with you, but there are certain levels of downness that make that sound borderline impossible.
Okay. Well, what are those levels of downness?
This one?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I think that's an unfortunate situation.
Ah, well, as they say these days, it do be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes. That's very true. Yeah, I find that our predicament that has been really the last 2 years and change of torment and less than auspicious financial situations is kind of now on the uptick, and we're starting to kind of turn things around as a business.
Yeah, well, look at you go. There's aspects of that out here because I'm doing more dog stuff, and that's not only more lucrative, but more meaningful work than going to this gym and cleaning up sweat after a bunch of knuckleheads. But yeah, like justifying working a $18 an hour job when I made in a day what I make in 2 weeks out here is just hard to come to terms with sometimes.
Right. I like doing my own kind of business because I there was like a famous Mark Cuban quote that said you should, if you have an opportunity to run your own business that earns you $75,000 a year versus working a job for somebody else where they pay you $175,000 per year, probably just do your own thing. One of the things that I love is waking up whenever the fuck that if literally, and this is how much of a fucking starker I can be, if I don't like you and we're working together, like one of the pretty girls, I'm like, yeah, kind of attitude on you lately. I'm like, these streets that they're always talking about? Well, why don't you hit the streets, please? That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, just coming out here, not having a network of dog people, that I'm slowly building it out here, and there is a lot of opportunity for that out here. But yeah, just I've been unmotivated for a couple weeks right now.
Yeah, I was right there with you. Our kind of cold times have kind of come and gone, and there was a time between November and the end of the year where I barely got out of bed, and it sucks because the thought is that if you're naturally funny and charming, that's the way you are all the time. The reality, though, is often not the case.
There are some dark times on the other side of those laughs, I'll tell you that much.
I agree, and so with me at least, what kind of got me through it is that I like pushing on the parts of the business that are working, and then I like kind of abusing what little authority I have with the people who have kind of wronged me within the business. Like there's a guy who was doing SEO for us. He's a Vietnamese guy in LA, and he's real smart at first, and then about 3/4 of the way through his job, he developed this wonderful gambling habit, and I was like, he would text me at the track and at the casino. I was like, unless you're planning on giving me some of those winnings, I think a whole lot of silence is exactly what I need from you right now. Thank you, sir.
Dang, he got by the gamble bug.
He's telling me all this stuff about how he can't lose, and then he's betting on the Auckland Tennis Pro tournament. That apparently all of the tennis pros are down in New Zealand having a tennis, and that he knew who was injured and who wasn't. And he's like, you should really bet. I was like, you should really get back to work, you fucking cunt.
He's got a system.
He's got a system. It's called blowing my money at the track. That's what his system is.
Oh my God. The justifying gambler who found the inside scoop. There's a Seinfeld bit about that. Something about his mother was a mutter, and that Kramer overhears some, he loves the slop. Kramer overhears some horse race lore and then uses it to his advantage.
But see, like so many other people, this guy is just so the typical American. Like I think I don't know enough about him. We only worked together for like 6 months, but I've known enough about him to know that when he's on his shit, he's great. And when he's not, I might as well just set the money on fire in my kitchen because it would at least keep me warm briefly while it burned.
Oh my God.
But he's giving this guy money. It ain't doing a good goddamn thing. But what are you going to do? I love the idea that he might have struck it big, and if he actually won like a jackpot, it's such a funny word. If he pulled himself into a jackpot, I think that would be wonderful. And I'm not a hater. I would say congratulations. But the fact that it's like this, like he told me he won $200 at the track, and I was like, $200. How much did you lose before you won the $200? I have a lot of questions, and I think he just is the confirmation bias, which is one of the most rampant, I would say, American biases in the wide range of psychological bullshit. Whereas we do one thing good one time, and guess what? We're experts the next day. And I don't know about that. Yeah.
Dang, yeah. It's going to take a lot more $200 wins for this guy to be set straight. Let's say he wins $1 million. Do you think he's set for life, or do you think he's going to burn out quickly in 3 months? Come on.
I couldn't live off of $1 million. Get out of here. I could live on
Easy come, easy go.
Yeah, exactly. I would live on maybe 5 to 8 at the most years for $1 million. No, I have very concrete goals in mind for the business, and as much as in the midst of this whole economic downturn that was definitely negatively affecting my own point of view, we were also trying, which is really shitty timing, to sell a huge chunk of the business, and that number came down so low, and I had to ask myself, I was like, what the hell am I actually doing here? Because like the amount of money that I would have got for it, a couple of years at the most we could have got from it. I was like, you know what? I like my little business, and kind of just maybe fuck off all you guys and let's get back to work.
Yeah, $10 million seems like just enough to invest, find a good place to be, and set you straight for a little bit.
So that's my goal. My card goal is $10 to $20 million. It used to be $4 to $20 million because the money market account used to pay more, and you could have a very like a fixed rate of return that you could just kind of live off of the juice. Those days are gone. That was like 20 years ago. So these days you have to kind of play a little bit in the market and hope that things go well, which, you know, the Americans are great at squashing the little guys. So generally speaking, that does work.
Yeah.
For how long and to what degree, I don't know. I think like, you know, okay, so our father's a smart guy, reasonably smart guy, not a lot of experience under his belt, but a learned person, shall we say, scholarly in his way.
Is this going to be a Don Ford conversation?
No, definitely not. That's one of the great shameful moments when the family was built out of an investment. That guy was such a car salesman anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, but by Tiny Madoff.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
small town Madoff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, we're usually very prudent folks. We don't speculate with great confidence nor stupidity. But no, do you know that when Dad stopped working, when that happened?
Working as far as in between retirement and University of Redlands?
Right. There was another university post Redlands.
What was that?
Okay, good. See, I didn't really know this until I spent like 2 weeks in Pasadena, where they now live. And, you know, they don't really do anything. He takes care of Tia, you know, the wonderful older person who raised him, and, you know, has to do various family things. But as much as he's kind of a busybody and likes to look busy all the time, he ain't been doing jack shit since before COVID. And as much as there's something in the male psyche that wants to hold on to work, our great uncle, right, is kind of like the pater familias, the elder father figure of the family. He worked until he was 74. And men have this compulsion to kind of work until they kind of can't.
Have some purpose.
Exactly. And that's another reason why I don't want to sell the business. I'm like, what, I'm going to retire at 42? I don't even know what the hell I would do. I would start another version of probably the exact same business, which is what Richard did, the Malibu guy. And I'm like, I thought better of it. But so when faced...
Yeah. Zach retired at 42. He moved down to Antarctica and threw all of his money down on some ice horse because he thought he got the inside scoop, and now he's flat broke in Antarctica without even couldn't even get a flight home. Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get back either on a flight, which is like $5,000 for the round trip, or on a nuclear powered Russian ice breaking vessel, which the Drake Passage, one of the most precarious parts of any ocean on planet Earth. So that does not actually appeal to me. If I'm going, it's with a plan, and I intend to come back.
Sure. So what happened with this other college?
So I don't even know what it's called. Western Governors University. It sounds like Hollywood upstairs medical school to me, but whatever. He's usually associated with reputable institutions.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, it's COVID comes around. Are you familiar with COVID-19?
It rings a bell.
So COVID comes around, and you know, he's I know you don't like astrology, but he's very much a typical Capricorn, where he has to be the boss and the center of it all. He's a very kind of self-centered, selfish personality, which is great if you have to be an instructor like a professor, which he was at the end of his career. And they asked him, I'm sure politely, it's a reputable institution, so I understand, to do what he was doing over Zoom. And without working even one day over Zoom, he's just like, I'm not doing that. And he retired. And that was it. And I was kind of floored by that. I was like, you know, especially guys will hang on to a job until they're incompetent and overpaid and oppressing younger people downstream from attaining their dreams. And he just kind of walked away. And I was like, well, I know that there's family stuff, Tio's real old and he's got to like, I don't know, install a hot tub or rake leaves or, the many things he was known
The classics. Yeah. Unbunch the rugs to avoid the classic late in life fall. Hey man, bunchy rugs and tall carpets are the number one killers of the elderly.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's not a lot going on. And anytime I hang out with them for any period of time, I'm just like, it's so deadening. I'm like, wow, you guys, it's just like political television and sports. And then like, Tia needs some prescription medication filled. And then that's
oxygen tank.
Yeah, it's something. And I'm like, okay, well, if I had to do that for longer than a week, I would like maybe attempt some side of suicidal gesture just to get out of it because it sounds terrible. I wouldn't want to die, but I might make you think I had tried something like that.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
Cause a little family stir. Just bring in a little. Just shake things up with a little suicidal ruckus.
Yeah, and not because I'm anything other than self-interested and have any number of things I would rather be doing that don't involve, watching somebody slowly pass away. It just doesn't sound very appealing. But just this idea that, like, in the face of doing something that he just didn't want to do, he just said, "I'm not going to do it." And we talk trash about him. He's kind of a square, in a lot of ways, and didn't have a lot of life experience. Didn't really travel or take on a lot of like scandalous love affairs like his oldest son did. But like, he was a stable guy and not a bad guy. And the fact that he would basically say, "I'm done," and wrap it up, I was kind of impressed by that. And I thought, well, maybe that there's some hope for this world after all. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a garage that needs a redoing or like a siding or a gutters to be cleaned.
So here's the new thing. You'll appreciate this. So when we have kind of two rambunctious youngsters and there's like a square, which is like really at the heart of Pasadena High, this thing that we're working on. And there's this kind of like square authoritarian, at the top of the familial primate hierarchy. The tendency is to want to stir things up. I mean, at least for me, as much as I'm now 42, when I'm hanging out with him, I'm once again 15 to 16 years old.
Yeah, sure.
Really something. And so like he'll start talking to the gardener who has to like, there's like a rot in the trees in the front yard at Hill, and like the top of the tree has to go. And Lonnie with his major in Spanish when he was an undergraduate, sometime 1,001 years ago, still has some command of Spanish in him. And these days, because I've been down here so long and I've improved my Spanish a little bit, not only will he talk Spanish to the guy who's trimming the trees, but he'll kind of shoot his eyes my way to see if I'm picking up on his Spanish. I was like, "Yes, sir, you are my father, and I acknowledge the fact that you have a reasonable grasp of the Spanish. It's very impressive."
Say a thing in Spanish and then go. Did you catch that? Did you hear me hablando to that hombre, buddy?
But the funny part is that like anybody who does things not just to show what they're doing, really for the benefit of other people, because the nature of language is just to connect. Like even if your Spanish isn't perfect, like the girl I'm seeing now, her English isn't perfect, but I know what she means, right? And as long as the person knows what you mean, even if you're not perfect, unless there's some kind of complete asshole who wants to humiliate you, the tendency is like, okay, fine, it's not perfect. So when he's on this flex where he has to show off not just to the person he's talking to, but to others, wink, 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 nudge, nudge, nudge. We go to this place called Sinaloa Taco Numero Dos or something like that. This is the new taco place in Pasadena that they like.
Yeah.
And he gets to the end of the meal, and he's never been a generous man with the tipping, but he goes to say what he is going to tip, and he can't for the life of him remember the Spanish word for tip, which is
Propina.
Okay, great. So it's propina. And I, he looks at me and he looks at Tia and he looks at Laura and he's all flustered and he blushes. And I was like, "Do you mean propina?" And he's like, yeah, of course, that's what I meant. I was like, well, I don't know about of course, but like the only person who's embarrassed by this is you. The rest of us are just rolling their eyes at the fact that you would kind of force your like armchair general principle Spanish onto all of us who very clearly speak English with no problem whatsoever.
I mean, for what it's worth, and I'm sure you can appreciate this, looking the way we do, to have a social proof of the ability to speak Spanish in particular has a fascinating amount of like social credit that you get for looking as white as can be and not being able to just speak it and understand it, but to do do it in a reasonably good accent, like I've always enjoyed the way a native, even a few days ago, I had this girl who was clearly Mexican, and had a pretty good grasp of English, but did things way easier in Spanish. Like even saying her name as Ariana instead of Ariana, and just saying all these things in an English way. And I was trying to, I got to the end of the conversation, and we were reminding each other of her name, and I was like, "Oh, it's Ariana, right?" And she's like, "Oh, you say it right." I'm like, "Claro que sí, que puedo hablar un poquito de español también," and like she just loves it. And so there is something from their perspective that to look this way and be able to speak Spanish is greatly positively received. So I totally get where he's coming from, but the way he goes about it is just so fucking corny.
Okay, so I agree with you entirely. And part of me being down here and doing well down here, I mean, there's a reason why I'm not rushing to go home. And it's not just because things are like between 40 and 50% cheaper, which they are. What we've learned is that things cost here kind of what they should cost in the States, but the States kind of become unstable, and Mexico is kind of just más tranquilo. It's just how it is. So everything you're saying, I agree with. What I don't necessarily agree with is that we're doing this as some kind of wank to impress anyone other than the person that we're talking to. And because I'm such a homebody, I do digital things all the time, unless I'm out getting trash with my friends. And there's a lot of mezcal in this country, which definitely has my name on it. Believe me.
Is that what you're drinking on over there?
I don't know what you're talking about. What are you?
This guy's having a nice Sunday libation. Yeah, I mean, once again, if I had one, I would do one.
Yeah, this is just whatever the girl has left here, because she likes to have like a beer at the end of the night. And I'm like, okay, that'll be fine. No problem. I'll have 3 of your beers after you leave. Salud. But no, what I mean to say is that I don't need to do it to impress my friends. Like, I will make fun of my friend Brandon down here only because he's lived here a full year longer than me. Most of which, of those 2.5 years living in Mexico, he's had a Mexican Spanish-speaking girlfriend, and literally says like gracias, delicioso, and michelada. And the way he says them, I love this guy so much. He's such a positive person and knows how to make a good impression on people. He will say it looking up from the menu, ordering his michelada. He goes, and do you have how do you say it? Michelada? As though he said it for the first time, as though he hasn't lived here for 2.5 years. So I was like, that's a gift. I don't even know what to call that. You're full of shit, and I know it, but like, you have a real gift, sir. I appreciate that.
Well, the accolades or reverence or adoration that it receives from actual Spanish speakers is merely a secondary bonus to the fact that I like to connect with somebody in the language that they are native speakers of. So like, that's the primary thing. But that look of surprise, and there's an immediate respect that comes with being able to do it reasonably well. And like you pointed out before, to be able to mock yourself, throw a little jab at them, just talk about how dumb you are as just a funny that, oh my God, that goes so far to not be just the typical white person grandstanding on the shoulders of everything.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I joke, we've talked about this, but I take shots of myself constantly, and they really do like that here. The flip side of that coin is I live in a building, and at the bottom of the building, like a little bit around the corner, is a 7-Eleven. And this is a known neighborhood for like a lot of gringos, a lot of Americans, but also is kind of a gay neighborhood. And so it attracts some interesting people. And there was this huge bear gay guy with like a ringer tee on. He's very like meatsy, and he was just giving it to the girl at the 7-Eleven one time, who's like 5 foot nothing, and wouldn't say shit if she had a mouth full of it. And I'm like, wow, it still do be like that sometimes. And I'm just like, this is why people hate Americans. And so the opposite, if I'm here, and usually if I've had a few drinks and I'm in an Uber, I will always chat up to people. I was like, well, what do you think about all these gringos down here? Because it's a little weird. In my neighborhood, I mean, even like late at night, I'll hear like stumbling home from the bar, somebody singing like Miley Cyrus Flowers. It's girls arm in arm, watching as one of them pees behind a car. And I was like, oh, the Americans are here. Wonderful. They're loud and they're crazy. And it's kind of how it's seen. The locals don't mind it because they generally spend money and they want to be a part of the whole thing. And it's like an uneasy peace we have between everyone. But that's really just for the tourists. As a person who lives here, like, I have to go about my business and take out the trash and pay the rent and let in the gas man to go on the roof and fill up the big gas tank so I have hot water. It's, it's more of a commitment. And when you get to that point, it's less about trying to impress random idiots and more about like, what can we do to just kind of get through this? Because we we all need to like kind of go about our thing to live our lives, so to speak.
Yeah, and you're in an assimilation process that is the entirely right thing to do when you go to a place that isn't your typical place. Like, you can maintain some of the things that make you you, but you better damn well adopt the respectful understandings of the place that you're in, or you'll stand out as a real fuckface no matter where you go. You should participate in the local culture while maintaining a semblance of your own individual culture, for sure.
What do you think it is in Antarctica? What do you think the culture's like there? They have like a local tongue? Is there a lingo? How does it work?
I don't know that there are natives to Antarctica. It's completely uninhabited, and anyone that's there are just like, either governmental, explorative. No, I don't think there's like an indigenous Antarctican.
I think you're right. Arctic means with bears, and Antarctic means without bears. So one has polar bears and one doesn't, and I think that those are the only inhabitants.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that if there were some indigenous there, they would say something like, we have 300 different ways to refer to ice. And I'm like, yeah, I could have guessed that. We have 300 different words for ice. I'm like, okay, I get it. Can you help me with some of that? I don't have any native Antarctican dialect in my head. No, I don't think there's any native inhabitants there.
What is that? Some kind of code? I don't know the code.
Yeah, man, I don't know the code. I don't think there's Antarctican code. But you find some people that can say the things that you say, and you got some people down there. I don't know. I would think that in an environment that's that harsh, that things like distinct differences in countries of origin don't really matter, because you have to stick together to stay alive.
Okay, I would tend to believe that too, and that's why people who are interested in space are kind of interested in that as well. It's kind of bleak and weird, and you have to have like technical expertise, and also like can handle like a first aid kit and like a rifle to like put the local polar bear or savage penguin at bay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would imagine there's an assortment of Yeti varieties that we don't have in the northern regions in the States. Like they probably have a wide variety of Yeti lore or actual Yetis. Abominable snowmen.
That's also a question. What's the difference between the abominable snowman and the Yeti?
I think one was on a Disney ride, and the other one is thriving in the tundra of Antarctica.
I think that we've talked about this about cryptids, that cryptid lore is pervasive in all cultures all around the world, and they all have some story. We were exposed to that firsthand, at least I was. You waited in the car, were scared when our father and I went snipe hunting.
No, I wasn't too scared. I already knew it was a joke. I wasn't scared. I was like, why don't you guys, I hear that when you rustle them out with stones, that they often go back to the car that the people came in, and once you drive them to me, I'll take care of the rest. That's what I was thinking when I was 10, you maniac. That I would take care of the hard work while you flushed them out. If you can get them out of that low chaparral, that you can drive them to me at the car, and I'll take care of the end result.
So it's not that. There's a million other bullshit things like that. Ogopogo is in British Columbia. It's like a lake-dwelling monster, like a sea serpent of some kind, and a million other things that I don't know about. Oh, do you know about the Mothman?
Yeah, I am a fan of cryptid lore, but I always leave space for magic and the unknown, but I don't have, there is a certain amount of evidence that I would need to see to be full on in it. But of course, there are things that we haven't seen. If you couple intelligence with evasiveness and a large swath of land for which these cryptids have become familiar, well, we're just out there with our boots and hiking sticks. Like, I could see how they could get away from us, but the way it's always presented is no different than the fucking Patterson footage of the Sasquatch, which it's always at a distance, it's always shaky and fuzzy, and everyone has nice cameras, and it's always just a wisp and an almost, and it just ran by, and I just about had it. It's like everyone has nice cameras now, and there's no more cryptids than there ever was.
That's unfortunate, and I tend to believe that to be true, which is why, and this is an interesting sort of segue, I tend to put a little more stock into some of the U.S. government, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and other people who have kind of blown the whistle, so to speak, on the availability of new data that shows that there are, unidentified aerial phenomena. We don't say UFOs anymore, we say UAPs. But instead of like, as you have said, where it's like shaky and has like a 90s timestamp on it and it has the resolution of like a Motorola Razr. You're like, no, I don't have a lot of stock in that. I do, however, like the idea that the US government is going to foist into the public forum some evidence that has to do with the potential of either interdimensional or some other kind of less bullshitty sounding advanced technology running little like a sentient squirrel, or my friend Brandon calls them like a itty bitty. He's like, we don't got to worry about them. That's just a little itty bitty. I was like, all right, well, whatever the fuck they are, I kind of would like to see that happen. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to see like an intergalactic squid come by and just kind of razzle dazzle with its like, oh, it doesn't have 8 tentacles, it has like 16, and I'm like, oh, that shit's wild. We only have 8s out here. But yeah, I mean, yeah, same goes for ghosts, and I'm sure I've said it before that like, why does a ghost always have to be a green sphere that goes by, or a cold breeze, or something touched my hair, or it's a wisp of ectoplasm? How it would be way funnier if like it just popped into full frame vision, like I'm a ghost, and then it disappears. You're like, what the like? Why is it always got to be old timey? Where's modern ghosts? Like a kid that got wrecked up in a car asks if you could check on his TikTok because he can't handle our earthly phones on the plane that he's on.
so like a little snot-nosed Zoomer dies, and the first thing they want to do to reconnect with the terrestrial plane is to check and see how their TikTok's doing.
Yeah, he's like, I sent this random girl a dick pic before I left. Like, if I give you my login, can you check back in and at least see if she saw it or not? Yeah, I mean, okay, like he gives me his login through a series of, I don't know, dots and dashes or something, and I check on it, like, yeah, she saw it. Like, did she respond? I'm like, you're not gonna like it. She did. She said unimpressed and reporting you to whomever. Like, oh, all right, well, gotta shoot your shot. Like, why is it always gotta be some old Dickensian child with a tin can talking about his knickers?
So that was a meme. That was totally a meme that I shared. It was about why is it always like a Victorian era, spooky child? Why isn't it like some random TikToker doing the stanky leg and that's the ghost?
Yeah, dude. Pop back in and show me something that was cool in your generation. I was around for that. Throw me a stanky leg. Fucking give me some sort of a dab or something. Let me know that you're legit. Dial in your opacity so I see like through you, and then you crank it up to like 97% so I could like still see through you a little bit. There's no way that ghosts don't have control over their opacity if they can make it onto this earthly plane.
We're gonna get it right there, sir. That was good.